The Senate yesterday confirmed Loretta Onoche and 12 other nominees as chairperson and board members of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. Arise correspondent Georgina Ndukwe Ezeanyika has details.
Brushing aside opposition from different quarters against the nomination of Special Assistant to the President on New Media, Loretta Onoche, as chairperson of the Niger Delta Development Commission, the Senate has finally confirmed her and 12 others. This followed the presentation of a report by the Vice Chairman of the Senate Committee on NDDC, Amos Bulus, during plenary.
During the screening exercise, the committee observed that 2 of the presidential nominees were absent, and there was no information from the Special Assistant to Mr. President on National Assembly matters, explaining their absence. The 2 presidential nominees that were absent and therefore not screened are 1, Dr. Pius Ekperemwen Odudu, nominee to represent Edo State on the governing board of the Niger Delta Development Commission. 2, Engineer Anthony Akane, nominee to represent Imo State.
Before the other nominees were approved, some senators objected to Onoche's confirmation, saying she is not from an oil-producing community.
We should add a clause in our resolution calling on not only this president, but all future presidents who will have to implement the act to comply in their nominations with the requirements of indigenship. Because what the law says is that the nominees should come from oil-producing areas.
Whatever will form a bottleneck to the inauguration of the commission, I think we should leave it. Because the truth argument about host community and oil-producing community have not been properly defined.
This report will have been very beautiful if the chairman has referred to our position in Ondo State that 3 senators declined to support someone.
This is a report of the committee because you have signatures, so don't particularize it that the chairman did this or didn't do that.
The Senate then went into the committee of the whole to confirm and approve their nomination.
The nomination of Loretta Ifeanyi Onoche from Delta State representing South-South is hereby confirmed as chairman in the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Dingba?
Well, for the new board members, the President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, has this advice.
And for those that will take over the mantle of leadership, please, let's maybe digress a bit. Let's really see NDDC as a development institute rather than a cash cow. People should ensure that communities that this institution is supposed to work for really benefit from its existence and the resources.
Lawan also requested that copies of the forensic audit report of the NDDC be made available to the National Assembly. Georgina Ndukwe Ezeanyika, Arise News.
For more on the Senate confirmation of nominees for various positions in the NDDC amid strong oppositions by some concerned Nigerians is Dr. Benson Enikuomehin, former NDDC commissioner who represented Ondo State, and Emmanuel Igbini, an oil and gas expert from the oil-producing area of Ughelli North Local Government Area of Delta State.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Enikuomehin and Mr. Igbini. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, gentlemen.
Good morning, Dr. Abad. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, this question is for both of you. Now that the Senate has confirmed Loretta Onoche and others, chairman and members of the board of the NDDC, was all that controversy necessary in the first place? Let me start with you, Dr. Enikuomehin.
Well, Dr. Abati, thank you, and good morning to Nigerians. The Senate has the power, as provided in the Constitution, to confirm persons whose name have been forwarded to the Senate by the President. That is their constitutional right. However, when it comes to the nominees or persons who are to serve on the governing board of the Niger Delta Development Commission, there are provisos as to what should be done about the nominees who should serve. The NDDC Act 2000 provides in section 2, subsection 1, that there shall be for the commission a chairman, B, a person who shall be indigene of the oil-producing area to represent the member states. And the member states are listed as Abia State, Akwa Ibom, down to River State. It follows, therefore, that when you are to choose a person to represent any of the member states, you must take into consideration a condition precedent, which is the individual, among other qualifications he may possess, shall be an indigene of the oil-producing area. That is a clause that is provided in the NDDC Act. When you go to section 12, subsection 1, the section also provides that if you are to choose a managing director and the 2 executive directors, what applies in the case of the state representative also applies. The section provides that there shall be for the commission a managing director, 2 executive directors, who shall be indigenes of the oil-producing areas, and so on and so forth. Therefore, in the nomination of who should be the state representative, who should be managing director and ED, the condition is that the individuals who are to be nominated by the president and who are to be confirmed by the Senate shall be, and it's not a thing that is optional, it's a shall be indigenes of the oil-producing area. Now, when it comes to that of the chairman, section 2(1)(a) says there shall be for the commission a chairman. The clause of who shall be indigene of the oil-producing area is not mentioned. It's silent about it. But when you go to section 4 of the Act, it says that these shall rotate among member states in alphabetical order. And this accounts for why in the first board, headed by Chief Onyema Ugochukwu, who is not from the any of the oil-producing areas in Abia State. I do know that Ukwa West, Ukwa East form the local governments where oil is produced in Abia State. Chief Onyema Ugochukwu is not from any of these. But when you look at section 2(1)(a), which does not put in the phrase of who shall be indigene of the oil-producing area, that was a leeway for him to be made the chairman. So if anybody is chosen who is not is from oil-producing area, section 2(1)(a) appears to me to give that person a soft landing. But a community reading of the whole Act will show that the essence of it is that members of the board should be persons who are from the oil-producing areas, because they are the ones who know where the shoe pinches them. Therefore, when the Senate is at any time to consider the confirmation, the condition precedent which the Senate must look at is that is the person an indigene of the oil-producing area. This was tested in the 8th Assembly when someone was chosen from Abia State. I think one Donatus Enyinama or so. And then the Senate sat together and asked him, are you from the oil-producing area? His answer was, I am from imparted area. They said, no, it's not imparted. If you are not from the oil-producing area, you can't go. The same thing happened in Ondo State when Mr. Tokunbo Ajasin in 2016 was nominated. The Senate committee headed by Senator Peter Nwabuchi did ask him, you are from Owo. Owo is almost 200 kilometers from Ilaje, where oil is produced. Are you from oil producing area? He began to define what the area meant, but the question was put to him straight, is Owo an oil producing area? The answer was no, and the Senate rejected his nomination. Senator Osita Isunazo, fine gentleman, from Imo State, was nominated to serve on the governing board as the representative of Imo State. The gentleman, being a lawmaker, looked at the law and said, I am not from oil producing area. He declined to serve. Therefore, the nomination of persons, particularly on those who were not or who are not from the oil producing area, the same hour wherein the Senate declined the nomination or confirmation of Mr. Tokunbo Ajasin, is the same local government from our local government where Mr. Charles B. Ogumola comes from. And we began to wonder, why will the Senate go ahead and work contrary to the precedent laid down in the 8th Assembly? So some of us, we did petition to the Senate. We verified the petition with affidavit as required by the Senate rule, and we made representation. And to cap it all, the 3 senators from Ondo State, Senator Nicholas Tofowomo, Senator Ayu Akinyelure, Senator Professor Robert Borough, all stood against this. They wrote. In fact, the document which was written was presented to the Senate President, signed by the 3 of them, and they rejected the nominee on the ground that he is not from the oil-producing area. I read just a paragraph. So our position is premised on the fact that the nomination of Mr. Charles Ogumola is non-compliance with the provision of Section 12(1) of the NDDC Establishment Act. So they said the aforementioned act clearly stated that the nominee for the position of the Executive Director project shall be an indigene of the oil-producing area. And the senators concluded, Mr. Charles Ogumola is not an indigene of the oil-producing area of Ondo State. To cap this, sir, the government of Ondo State issued a press statement signed by the Commissioner for Information and said that the state aligns with the senator in respect of this nominee that was purportedly confirmed yesterday by the Senate. Now, the question will be, can you cry more than the bereaved? The people of the oil-producing area says this man is not from us.
At this point?
The state government said no. And then the Senate still went ahead to do it. There must be something that is more than the eye can meet. Therefore, conclusively, Dr. Abati, if you are not an indigene, you cannot represent any of the states, and you cannot be a member of the oil-producing areas. Other provisions are for persons who are from the North Central, from the Northeast, from the Northwest. That particular phrase or clause is not applicable to them. It's not provided for them. But as long as you are going to be a state representative, an indigene chief of the area is a condition precedent. Anything done to the contrary is a corruption of the law.
Okay, Dr. Enikuomehin, at this point, let's bring in Comrade Igbini. Comrade Igbini, I'm sure you've been listening to Dr. Enikuomehin. And you are from Delta State, where there is also a big issue about the nomination. Your observations.
Yeah, thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Abati. First of all, let me thank management of Arise for inviting me. This is an issue that has been very, very dear to my heart. If you Google, you'll see that I have been issuing press statement on behalf of my organization, advising Mr. President against deliberate wrong advice from those close to him, particularly the PDP governors of the South. Remember, it all started when even Governor Siraki Ndisi was still in office. He started the whole confusion. He started to say, the MD position must come to Bayelsa State and all of that. And then I don't know how they managed to convince Governor Wiki and other governors, Governor Kua of my state and the other governors. And then they went to the State House to see Mr. President. And then thereafter, the issue of forensic auditing came up. And then there's been one confusion to the other. Let me remind Nigerians and my dear President Muhammadu Buhari that on the 18th of October, 2019, he wrote officially to this same Senate requesting for the screening and confirmation of 16 nominees. The Senate, under the leadership of the same distinguished President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawa, did screen and confirm. In fact, the Senate went further to give an instruction that these confirmed members should be allowed access to the premise of NDDC in Port Harcourt to commence work. And here we are today, discussing the same thing. I had actually wanted to send him a personal message, the President of the Senate, to advise him that his own personal integrity is at stake here. As the government is winding down both the executive arm and legislative arm, Mr. President is doing everything possible to make sure that he leaves a legacy. It is questionable that under one Senate, you have two set of members of board for the same commission. I have never seen that happen before. It is rather unfortunate. It is embarrassing to the entire country. Now, I am an engineer. I know the industry in and out. I work for a multinational oil company, onshore, offshore, on the swamps. So I know in and out. We talk about areas, some say community. Again, with due respect to now Senator Siraki Ndisi, his comments are further creating more confusion. I say with due respect. He started the confusion when he was governor, and now in the Senate, he's setting more confusion. And who do I blame? I blame the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who has allowed himself to be misled. With due respect, I say that because I feel for him. I know that he means well. It is unfortunate. Now we are talking about communities. There's nothing like community in the NDDC Act. What you have here is producing area. And let me say again that I want to appreciate the National Assembly under the then leadership of President of the Senate, Pius, what's his name again? May he so rest in peace. Sorry? Pius Akadu. The first Senate President. Yeah, God bless you, my sister. Thank you very much. And then the Speaker then, Gallinaro. For the first time, we saw a Nigerian nation coming together to say, look, the people who suffer the degradation, destruction of their communities, their environment, their areas, deserve to be given special attention. And they rose against the then President Obasanjo, who was vehemently opposed to this act. And this is the only act that you can say is truly the creation of the National Assembly. They have to override the president, and no other bill, no other National Assembly has done that till today. What would Senate President Ahmed Lawa be saying to himself now? That under his leadership, he has two board members for the same commission? I don't understand what they are doing. I know it's politics. I sure do, but it's really sad that we are taking politics to the very, very wrong and dangerous, dimension that shouldn't be.
Okay.
My dear Dr. Ruben, you know Warri very well. Please, if you can come to Warri with your team, you will weep for this country. Ditto other states, other areas. When people talk about oil area position communities or whatever they call it, I just laugh. I'm an expert in the oil industry as an engineer and petroleum engineer. I don't want to go into those controversies, but just like my brother said, Section 21A of the NDDC Act gave that opening to our sister Loretta or any other person. Because it didn't say area, you must be an indigene of an oil producing area. It just left it open. And she is from Delta State. She is not representing Southside because I didn't say you present a zone. She's representing Delta State. Truly, she's not from an oil producing area. But Section 21A has given her the leeway. The only condition is that she has to be somebody of integrity and ability. Is she somebody of integrity and ability? Maybe yes. I don't really know her. So nobody's raising question about that. So which means it's okay for her. But the question is, which board are we going to take now? All right. Anybody can go to court to challenge it. Right. That's the truth. You can't have two boards at the same time.
Igbini, you've just spoken to what I was going to ask in terms of, so what are the next steps? The report says that despite protests that have come up from even representatives, senators from Ondo State who had challenged the appointment of Mr. Ogumola, but also beyond that, those who had said that they were not indigents. I know you've explained that it's area and community, the differences and all that, but there's still agitations. And so the question to you is, so what next? And then the question perhaps to both of you would be then, now we have an NDDC board, despite it being flawed, despite criticisms. How about what are the expectations from this particular board? We've talked about the corruption reading, and even the Senate president had talked about it being a cash cow, the NDDC being a cash cow, rather than it fulfilling the purpose for which it was set out to do. I'd like to ask you, what are expectations from this current board for the new, as it were, NDDC? I'll go with you, Comrade Igbini, first. Briefly.
Thank you, my sister. It is not correct to say or to refer to them as the current board. I have told you have two boards. One has been confirmed and still on standby. In fact, I've argued that the argument that, the president has to inaugurate does not arise. They should be allowed to go to their home. We don't have any board as far as the law is concerned now. And I think those who did that did it intentionally to set more confusion so as not to have a board. As to what we expect, let God touch their conscience. I'm speaking to you from Warri, and I've told you, come to Warri and you see. Show me any part of this Delta State. Is this Shekiri, Jo, Rubu, Ndokwa Nation, or you go to Bayelsa or the rest of it, and you say, yes, that these people actually, it's just they are using to compensate certain persons who are very loyal to them.
All right,
and of course, you know.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and as much as we would have loved to take your thoughts on this particular question, just very briefly, perhaps before we go, Doctor, could you kindly share with us your expectations, the task to the board, NDDC board?
Well, we must ensure that before we talk about the task, there's a condition precedent that must be laid. If you are not entitled to the throne and you are made a king, the first thing is to dethrone you, because you may not be the individual who will serve the people. The law is clear that if you are to serve on the commission, you should be indigent. If Mr. Ogumola is not, and any other person who is chosen from Ondo State to serve on the board of the NDDC is not from the oil-producing areas, there is no crisis about what the areas are. The oil-producing areas is the area where the oil companies are operating, where the oil companies are functioning, where the oil companies are producing oil. We are not talking about sugarcane. Therefore, anyone that does not come from this area, what applies to Ogumola applies to the person mutatis mutandis. And for those of us in the oil producing area of Ondo State, we will take the next step. We won't allow anyone
on that note,
who is not from the oil producing area
on
to go against the law. We shall do the needful.
On that note, we'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Enikuomehin and Comrade Emmanuel Igbini. Thank you very much indeed.